Hello everyone, welcome to this lecture of computer system security. Today we are going to start our lecture 5, which is about application security. We will be talking about intrusion detection. We say whether intruders, who are intruders, and we talk about components and architecture of intrusion detection systems. And then we go through different types of intrusion detection systems, and we talk about host-based intrusion detection, network-based intrusion detection system, and hybrid or distributed intrusion detection systems. And lastly, we talk about honeypots. In the second part of this lecture, we'll be talking about firewalls, which are basically another step toward detecting intrusions. We don't now want to only detect intrusions, we just also want to prevent them. So firewalls and intrusion prevention systems will be kind of discussed in the second part of the course. And after this lecture finishes, we would have only one lecture for the very last week of the class, which is not, like I mentioned before, is not going to be asked in the exam. So this is technically the last lecture that you need to kind of prepare for it for the exam. The very last lecture, lecture 6, I'll be talking about it, but and it's going to take a week. But that lecture is not going to be a part of the exam, so you don't have to prepare for that for the exam. Okay, let's get started and talk about intrusion. First of all, let's define intrusion. Of course, we know that one of the key threat towards security of our computer systems is kind of intrusion. And in any intrusion activity or any intrusion action, we have hackers or attackers that they try to either obtain unauthenticated access, which means that we have a computer system with some type of authentication or access control in place, or any kind of other types of security rules, and the hacker or intruder, that we also call it here in this lecture, he or she try to obtain unauthenticated access to our system, to our resources, to our security assets. Or the hacker or intruder, they try to expand already granted kind of privileges to them. For example, some user has some we have the system has authenticated a user, and the user is allowed to use some of the files, or let's say some of the APIs or system calls of our computer, but some other are not allowed to that person, to that user, because of the level of access which is defined for that user. If that user tries to expand the level of privileges, meaning that tries to, for example, access some of the files that he or she is not allowed, or tries to call some of the system calls that basically he or she shouldn't call them, this is also called intrusion, and that person is an intruder. So this is a definition kind of we have from our textbook. It says any security, a security intrusion is an unauthorized act that tries to bypass security mechanisms of a system. Of course, when someone tries to bypass the security mechanism, he or she wants to get access to some resources or assets, or he or she wants to expand kind of the already granted privileges to him. So this is a definition that we have for intrusion. Now let's talk about intruders. Who might be an intruder? Uh, from the organizational point of view, an intruder might be an insider person. An insider intruder means that that person is a legit user of our system. We have already uh, kind of we have already get to know that person, and that person is subscribed or has one of our registered or enrolled users, and we have already granted some levels of access to that person. So if that person tries to do some intrusion activity, we call that, or we can kind of list that as an insider intruder, because that person comes from uh, a set of legit or already registered users of that system. An intruder might be an outsider person. When I say person, though, it doesn't mean we are not talking about a real person. It might be one person or a team, or it might be an organization itself. Anyway, an intruder might be an outsider individual, which in that case means that the individual is not a already registered or a legit user of that system, but tries to, he or she likes to, or they like to kind of get some accesses to our system. In that case, we call them outsider. And the intruder might be a combination of both. What does this last one means? It of course talks about a group of intruders, not only one intruder. A single person intruder might be either insider or outsider, but like I mentioned, in many cases the intruders are not only one person. They are a group of individuals, a group of, let's say, experts or technicians helping each other in order to perform the actual intrusion. So if that's the case, the intrusion is being done by a group of persons or individuals. Some of them might be insiders and some of them might be outsiders. And in that case, we say that the intruders are a combination of insider and outsider persons or individuals. Okay. In terms of kind of goals and objectives, we also can define or classify the intruders. Intruders can be classified into 4 different classes. The first class we review here are called cyber criminals. Cyber criminals are individuals or members of organizations or a kind of a crime organization with the financial goals. The main reason they're conducting that intrusion is getting some financial benefits. They want to ransom, they want to, for example, exploit some data and sell that data over the darknet or something like that. But the main reason is financial reward, and their activities may include identity theft. Of course, identity theft is a noun for all of us, and we know that if the identity of a person is being theft, and many kind of bad financial things may happen to that person, and that identity might be used by intruders or might be or by other kind of criminal persons for some financial reasons. They may apply, for example, for a loan using using a stolen identity. If, for example, let's say my identity is being uh, stolen, someone may apply for a loan. Someone may rent something with that identity and stuff like this, which are all in the class of financial kind of gains for the attacker or intruder person. Uh, they may also want to theft financial credentials, which again is the same thing. Corporate espionage, they may want to kind of get some information which are supposed to be kept secret, some informational or organizational information. Like, for example, let's say sometimes we hear that the very last version of the Apple phone, that, for example, iPhone that Apple is working on it is just kind of leaked. This might be through some corporate espionage. The information is being stolen through some intruders, and that might be has the value to be sold to some, for example, let's say some newspaper or some medias. If you're the very first person who get access to that information. So corporate espionage means that the information or organizational information which are supposed to be kept secret, they somehow leaked through some intrusion, and now they can be used for kind of getting some financial benefits. Data theft and data ransoming or ransomware, also called. They're all examples of kind of activities that cyber criminals may do. Another thing about cyber criminals to know is that they sometimes meet in underground forums in order to trade tips and data. If I'm a cyber criminals intruder and I, for example, let's say I have stolen, I have collected, let's say, uh, a set of 1,000 identities, valid, real, existing, live identities. Of course, at some time I may want to sell that. So where should I go to sell them? I can. That's not a normal kind of data or kind of object that I go and kind of try to advertise it publicly. I should go somewhere specific. So there are some forums and web pages which are called dark market or dark web that basically uh, intruders can go there and advertise for their kind of products, which are of course all criminal products. They might be identity of some real person which were being stolen or attacked. One of the examples are this site darkmarket.org, which of course currently doesn't work. In 2008 they have detected it and they have kind of uh, downed it, and a group of people, I guess 60 different people from different countries, were arrested because of this kind of this website. But of course there are some others now and they're working and people may not be aware of that. I mean the official people or police may not be aware of that, and every day we hear that some dark website or dark forum are being detected by police and kind of they're being people, some criminal peoples or individuals are being arrested. Yeah, this is the first category of intruders that we have. The second category is called activists. They're either individuals which are working as an insider, which are working on the same company, or a member of larger group which might be which may have some outsider, but their main motivation is social and political causes. They conduct intrusion to some system. They attack a system because not because of gaining financial benefits, but because of some social and political causes. That, for example, they want to say something against, let's say, Facebook or something. They may try to conduct an intrusion to Facebook and put the Facebook down for some hours or some minutes or whatever. These people or these type of intruders also called hacktivists because they use the intrusion, they use kind of uh, attacking as a tool to kind of to have their voice listened, to have the other people kind of pay attention to what they are saying or what they want. They're called also hacktivists. And what they do, for example, they may do website defacement. They change kind of the appearance of the website and they attract some users. They implement denial of service, and they may do kind of theft and distribution of data that result in negative kind of publicly or compromise of their targets. These are all examples of what they do. Of course, they may do other stuff as well, but the major thing here is that their motivation is not kind of limited to financial. They mainly are motivated due to some social and political causes. The third group that we talk about them are called state-sponsored organizations. This is the third group of intruders. If you remember, we've talked about this in very first lecture of this course, and we've talked about the type of attack. We called it advanced persistent threat or APTs. They fall basically in that category. They're a group of hackers sponsored by government or by a kind of state in order to some targeted espionage or sabotage on a given system. The system is kind of clear or known here. They don't go and they don't want to do whatever or wherever it's possible. No, a specific system is targeted and a government or an organization, a big organization, might support the attackers in order to implement the advanced persistent threat on that a specific target system. Yeah, widespread nature of and scope of these activities by wide range of countries have used them kind of as a part of their army. This is kind of intel, or it might be to protect the allies of some countries. And the last group of intruders are kind of anything other than these three groups we mentioned. I'm going to give you one example. For example, attackers or hackers, which are who are motivated by some technical and scientific reasons. For example, we have classical hackers or crackers that they just want to find new vulnerabilities. So what they do is that they go and they of course do intrusion, and sometimes they might be successful as well. But their goal is not to gain financial benefits. They don't want to put any specific target down, or they don't want to espionage or make some sabotage on some systems, but they just want to detect or discover vulnerabilities in our computer systems. So they also sometimes, if you remember, again in the very first lecture of the class, we called them white hat hackers. Whatever white hat hackers do can be considered as an intrusion, and of course they are classified as kind of fourth group of intruders. Okay. Now another thing that we need to consider, we need to talk about, is the level of skills that intruders may have. Of course, not all intruders are skillful, technical, expert individuals. Sometimes we have kind of intruders that are beginners. They don't they don't know much about the details or technical details of computer systems or networking. They just try to do whatever they can. In the apprentice kind of level, hackers have minimal technical skills and knowledge, and what they do is that they just kind of use some of the known tools, existing tools, those kind of malware tools, and try to do some intrusions using those tools. Because of the kind of this feature, this type of intruders also called script kiddies, because they just copy scripts and run them. They may not understand it completely. They just follow whatever a toolkit tells them to do in order to kind of conduct an intrusion. And in terms of number, they might be the largest number of attackers or intruders, and this is kind of the portion of the story that makes them important. The beginner or apprentice intruders, they are not kind of skillful individuals, so they may not do anything if the number is 1 or 2. But considering the fact that, for example, there might be 5 million of them over the world, and every day they may do something, there is always chances that few of them by chance do something which is really harmful. So that's the reason that even beginner intruders should be considered and should be addressed. The second group of intruders are kind of journeyman intruders. They have some kind of technical skills and technical knowledge in order to modify and extend existing attacks or toolkits, and they can of course discover new vulnerabilities and new exploits, and they can do something. They may even be able to locate new vulnerabilities, as I mentioned, and these type of kind of intruders, in most cases, we see them as kind of insider intruders, and of course they use different types of tools. Mm, And the last kind of group of attackers that or intruders that we want to talk about them when it comes to conducting a real intrusion are masters. Master intruders are hackers or intruders that they have the highest level of technical skills, and they're capable of discovering a totally brand new category of vulnerabilities, which is something very, very dangerous. Means that when we say brand new vulnerabilities, it means that there is a big difference with the brand new vulnerability with the kind of existing, with the currently known vulnerability. Here, what journeyman can do, there might be some vulnerabilities. For example, let's say some of the ports of the network might be open, might not be secured. So open ports is a known vulnerability and everybody knows about it, but there's still some systems or some servers, they have some ports open, not secure. So what a journeyman or journeyman level intruder do is that they test various ports to see if any port is available or not, if any port of that server is open or not. In contrast, what a master level intruder do is they don't go for checking ports. They find new vulnerabilities which have been and which have not been used by any other intruders until this time. For example, you may heard about uh, meltdown vulnerability, which was a vulnerability against Intel processors. I guess it discovered in 2017 and resulted in a big security problem in almost all of Intel-based servers. So that's a totally brand new vulnerability and opens kind of shifts the paradigm, shift the security solutions, and everybody after that had to consider that, had to patch that. And sometimes they might be employed by organizations or by state uh, in order to conduct APT or intrusions to a specific system. And of course, this group of intruders are the kind of most dangerous and is most difficult to deal with them and prevent them. Okay, range of intrusion. When we say intrusion in a computer system or bypassing some of the security policies or all of the security policies that we have in place in a computer system, the name is kind of negative, it's very negative. But we should know that ranges of intrusions, we have a range of intrusions. Sometimes the impacts are not too severe or are not too bad, and sometimes the impacts of an intrusion are very severe. So we say that impacts of an intrusion attack may range from a benign to serious. At the benign level, we see some people that they just explore the internet, and since the number of them are very high, they may kind of came across some vulnerabilities, and intentionally or unintentionally they may conduct some intrusion into your system. They may access something into your system, but they are not basically there in order to hurt your system or steal your information. And in the serious side, of course, we have individuals or groups that they're skillful, they're knowledgeable, and they uh, they kind of directly address or target your computer, and they want to get some access or privileged access to some data or some services or some functions. Okay, Per NIST SP861, these are some examples of intrusions that might happen to uh, computer system. Server defacement, guessing or cracking passwords, which is of course understandable, copying databases containing credit card numbers, viewing sensitive data without authorization, running a packet sniffer in order to kind of listen to packets being transferred between a server or the rest of internet, or a client and the rest of internet, using an unsecured modem to access internal network and stuff like this. These are all considered as intrusions being done on a computer system or an organization. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to talk about is the behavior or pattern that we see in the behavior of an intruder. When an intruder tries to uh, um, implement an attack or intrusion, they may follow these six steps. Some of them can be kind of cancelled if the intruder doesn't like, but of course having them kind of makes the impact or maximizes the impact of that attack or that intrusion. I'm gonna go over them very quickly, and then in the few next slide I'm going to give you some real examples of each of these kind of steps in the intrusion to a computer system. The first thing that an intruder do is that he or she performs some information gathering toward the specific target. So it is called target acquisition and information gathering. What is the system that I'm going to kind of attack it? I need to collect some information about it. If there is some website for them, what's if there is any organization, what's the chart of that organization and stuff like that. Initial access. As an intruder, we have to have some type of initial access. We need to enter to the system. So that might be through some regular registration. You go and register as I'm an intruder. I go to that system and try to register for that system as a normal user. So that's called initial access. And then later, I try to leverage or expand the privileges that the system has given to me. So, which is called privilege escalation. So the system gives me some level of accesses, but of course, as an intruder, I'm not satisfied with that. I would like to expand that level of privileges and access some other resources in that system. This is the third step or third thing that we see in the behavior of an intruder. And then after that, some information gathering. Of course, after successful or accomplishing this step, I'm gonna gather some information, and of course, that information is the information that I am not supposed to access, but because of the privilege escalation I've done, I'm able to gather that information and I collect them. Of course, I save them somewhere in an external system or external device in order to later use them. And then I may want to maintain my access or expand my access. That's another thing that we may see. And lastly, what we see in an intrusion pattern is that the intruder tries to stay hidden, tries to cover the tracks, and tries to erase everything or hide everything that shows an attacker was here. Okay, now let's see some kind of example behavior for each of these kind of steps that we've talked about them. This is a real kind of example coming from the book. For target acquisition and information gathering, the attacker explore corporate website for information on the corporate structure, personnel, key systems, as well as details of a specific web server and operating system used. So if I'm gonna, for example, attack, let's say, some organization, of course I go their website, I see their website, I try to see what are the services they offer, I see their organizational chart. I try to collect as much as information I can, which are available to public. Basically, here the attacker tries to gather information which are available to public as much as he or she can. The attacker goes kind of one step further and try to look at the DNS, domain name kind of server, in order to look up to kind of or gather information about the target network of that organization, which means that basically the attacker tries to see who over the internet are the consumer of this organization. Let's say the attacker wants to attack, for example, organization A, and the organization A has a website a.com. So attacker, of course, would be can use that information if attacker knows who are the users or who are the customers of attacker A. Not we are not talking about users. We are talking about website who are feeding some information or who are getting some information from a.com. So they are called target networks of a.com. And of course, for doing that, attacker looks at the DNS to see. Attacker map network for accessible services using some tools, like for example nmap. For almost any of these steps, there are some tools. You may want to see who are the users or target networks of that specific system. You use WHOIS database. For network mapping, you use nmap. Okay, attacker also may send a query email to customer service contact, and of course review the response and try to collect information about the person who has responded that emails and any other details in the response. And the last thing, attacker tries to identify potential vulnerabilities in the services because they are going to be used later in the kind of future steps of the intrusion. So this is the information gathering and target acquisition. In the initial access, attacker tries to, he or she may try different things. They may register like a normal user. That's one thing that they can do. Or the attacker may do brute force attack in order to kind of break and get at least one username and password that the attacker can go through with. The attacker may use vulnerabilities like, for example, content management systems used for websites to see if he or she can gain some accesses. Attacker may send some esper phishing email to the users of that organization in order to get some valid or legit username and password. This is what is called as initial access, and at the end of initial access, attacker has something that with that kind of information or with that data, the attacker can log in or can have some levels of access. The level of access that the attacker has or the intruder has after initial access step might not be the exact thing that he or she likes, but it's something that the attacker kind of starts working with. And of course, like I said, the level of accesses here might not be the exact thing that the attacker likes, but the step C or the third step is privilege escalation, which means that basically if the level of accesses are not the same level that the attacker likes or attacker needs, attacker tries to expand it. So what he or she will be doing at this step is scanning the systems for application with local exploit. what are the applications on this on organization A that have some exploit and can be used in order to expand the privileges of the attacker. Exploit any vulnerable application to gain uh, elevated privileges. Install sniffers. That's another thing that the attacker may do. Attacker may install some sniffers to capture administrative passwords. Use captured password to access privileged information. So attacker tries to expand the privileges to the level that he or she needs. SFD is information gathering. Of course, after expanding or escalating the privileges, now the attacker scan files for desired information and transfer whatever he or she wants. Maybe it might be a large number of files or document to an external repository. It might be external cloud server, it might be external disk or whatever, and use the guest or capture password to access other servers on the network. So here we see that the intrusion is kind of getting expanded and expanded from one server. They start from one server and they try to go to multiple servers of the organization. And then here, of course, in a step D, attacker can kind of access whatever he or she wants. But of course, attacker wants to keep this level of attack or level of access. So maintaining access is the next thing. In this kind of step, the attacker may install some remote administration tools in order to create some backdoors or some kind of rootkits so that the attacker can repeat the same thing later. Of course, the administrators of the system may realize the attack and they may change something, so that user that the attacker initially used might not be useful for second attack or for next attack that the attacker may want to do. That's why the attacker, in order to maintaining the accesses, attacker needs to install something or to create some backdoor for himself. They may get access administrator password to access the network, and they may modify the security kind of settings of the system in order to, for example, disable the antivirus or intrusion detection systems that might be run on the organizational kind of computers. And lastly, attacker tries to hide everything he has done. Attacker tries to kind of hide files installed on the system. It edit log files in order to kind of erase everything that kind of shows the administrative that someone was here and an intrusion has happened. So attacker tries to remove all of them because like I said, they want to maintain the level of accesses. They don't want to lose it. They don't want to attack a system only one time. Of course, they want to be able to attack for multiple times. Okay, and now I'm going to talk about intrusion detection. We've talked about security intrusion. We said security intrusion is any unauthorized act of bypassing a security mechanism on a system that, of course, will try to get some unauthenticated accesses or expand some accesses. And in contrast to that, we have intrusion detection. What is intrusion detection? Intrusion detection is any hardware or software function or module that gathers information and analyzes that information in order to detect if an intrusion has happened. That information might be local information or might be network information. We'll be talking about them. And the intrusion detection system try to understand that something unauthenticated has happened to this system, and and of course it alerts administrators to do something. Okay, what are the major components we see in an intrusion detection system? we have three major components. The first thing is sensors. Sensors are kind of used to collect information and forward the information to the second component, which is analyzer. I'm going to give you some examples about sensors. For example, network packets. The network packet, it might be the whole packet, or let's say only the header of the packet. The network packets can be seen as a kind of source of information that can be used for analysis, and the analysis may tell us something if the system is working kind of um, normally, or if something some attack has happened to this system. So the network packet are one of the sensors that we may use in intrusion detection. Of course, when we say sensors here, we are talking about conceptualized or abstract sensors. Here we are not talking about physical sensors, like for example temperature sensor or light sensor. No, any source of information that might be affected with and without, or might be different in the case of having and not having an intrusion, that can be seen as a sensor. Network packet log files is another example that of course might be seen as a sensor, because log files keep everything, and log files may reflect to the administrator that someone was here. System call traces. What are the system calls which were being kind of called or invoked by a user? That's again another example of a sensor. Okay, information from the sensors are being collected, and while the sensors collect that information, they forward the information to the analyzer, and analyzer receives the information and try to analyze them, and this is the analyzer who determines if an intrusion has happened or not. Of course, if the analyzer detects an intrusion, it kind of signals the administrator, it indicates that an intrusion has happened or an intrusion is undergoing, in order to take some kind of actions toward that intrusion. The output of the analyzer, when analyzer kind of alerts the system or kind of start indicating that an intrusion is undergo, that signal might be kind of supported by some evidences. Those evidences, of course, if I'm an administrator person of a big network, let's say ANT's network, and the intrusion detection system alerts me that something kind of malicious or something suspicious or something, or an intrusion is going on, of course, the very first thing I want to do is I want to check what are the sources that kind of made the intrusion detection system to kind of declare an intrusion, because it might not be right. I want to make sure that really it's a real intrusion. So the intrusion detection decision most of the time is supported by some information that somehow proves that this is a real intrusion going on. And some of the analyzers in the intrusion detection system, they also provide some guidances to the administrator what to do at this time, at this situation. So this is the second component we see in intrusion detection systems. The third component is a user interface that of course enables the user to view the output of the analyzer and to control some of the behavior of the intrusion detection system. In some cases, the user interface kind of is equal to the manager, means that whatever the user interface gives the administrator person, they can use it in order to make some changes in the setting or configuration of the intrusion detection system. But in many cases, the user interface has multiple kind of layers, and uh, for some layers you can just see the settings, and it may not equate to the manager or director. So it's not like that you use a user interface and you can easily turn off the intrusion detection system using that UI. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to cover today is the types of intrusion detection systems. We have three kind of basic category for intrusion detection systems. Intrusion detection systems might be host-based or HIDS. When we say host-based, means that the intrusion detection system monitors the characteristics of a single host for catching suspicious activities. What it is, it basically means that the sensors that feed the analyzer, they're all looking at a local host. No network-based sensor are used in that intrusion detection. That's a host-based. That intrusion detection system doesn't look at the, for example, network activity or incoming packets, outgoing packets, ports accessed, stuff like this. It looks at the, for example, number of processes running on the system, the amount of memory used, operating system system calls which are invoked by the user. That's a host-based intrusion detection. And of course, there are a good, if we have multiple users on a computer, multiple users working on a computer, that might be the case that we use host-based. The second type of intrusion detections are network-based intrusion detection system. They look at the network traffic and analyze the network ports, network traffic, and the information or the protocols used at different layers to identify any suspicious activity. And the last one that makes the most kind of amount of sense is distributed or hybrid IDS. It combines the information from some sensors that they just look at the host, they just look at the local computer, and also it has some sensors that they look at the information coming from the network. These are called distributed or hybrid intrusion detection systems, which are now one of the kind of most widely used type of IDSs. Okay, I think we can stop here, and I'll continue from this slide about the requirements that we like to see for intrusion detection systems. Please use HIDS, like you see all uppercase, as the attendance code for today's lecture. Thank you and have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.